Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to the Hindu newspaper Analysis Townhall. Today, 3rd of September, we are going to have a look at the following issues from the Hindu newspaper. First one, today's issues are very important from the mains point of view. First one, women judges in Supreme Court. Recently, 2 judges have been appointed to the Supreme Court and there was no women of the 2. So, in this article, we will see the status of women representation in the Supreme Court and what are the issues and reasons behind this. Second, here we will analyze India-US relationship beyond trade in terms of strategic partnership, diaspora, economic and political relationship between India and US. Third, rise and risk of health insurance in India. What are the issues associated with the health insurance in India? Fourth, again the issue of the governor's assent to the state bills, where the case is going on in the Supreme Court and on daily basis there is a hearing in the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court has made some observations regarding the governor's role in assent of the bill. There is a Supreme Court order on the regulatory assets of the DISCOM. We will see what are the regulatory assets and what are the general issues with the DISCOMs in India. Let's start. India needs more women judges. Recently, we all are aware of that there are 34 judges in the Supreme Court, including the Chief Justice. Now, the 2 judges have been appointed to the Supreme Court and none of them was women. The status of women is, since 1950, only 11 women judges have been appointed to the Supreme Court. That is 3.8%. Here you can see the status of the presentation of the women in Supreme Court. Presently, there is only 1 women judge in Supreme Court, Justice Nagaratna. She also had a decent view in the appointment of the 2 recent appointments to the Supreme Court. Her observation was that there are other judges who are more senior to the 2 judges who have been appointed to the Supreme Court. So, she has given a decent judgment in the appointment in the collegium. Data on women representation in Supreme Court. Only 11 judges since 1950. Very poor representation. No women from SC/ST has ever been appointed. Only 1 Supreme Court judge, Fatima Bibi, from the minority faith. No other judge from that minority. Only 1 woman directly appointed from the bar. In case of male candidates, 9 judges have been appointed to the Supreme Court from the bar, but only 1 woman, Justice Indu Malhotra. So that shows the poor state of representation of women in the Supreme Court. What are the reasons or the issues behind this? First of all, the major issues are procedural as well as structural. First one, late age of appointment. Women are basically elevated from, say, district court to the high court to the Supreme Court at much later stage. If they are appointed late, for example, if the retirement age is 65 for Supreme Court judge and they are appointed at the age of 63, so their tenure will be very less in the Supreme Court. So it will reduce their tenure and chance to become the CJI. Example, Justice Nagaratna, present judge in the Supreme Court, she is going to be the first women Chief Justice of India in 2027. Good thing, but only for 36 days. Again, a bad thing. So basically, because of the late elevations, women judges get very less chance of becoming part of the Collegium or Chief Justice of India. So in 2027, we will have our first women CJI. Opaque collegium process through which the judges are elevated to the Supreme Court or the High Court. The process is opaque. What are the various criteria are not made public. So, whether women are considered or not, what are the criteria basically under which the appointments are made, it is not made public. It is not transparent. In certain cases, criteria like caste, religion or regional diversity, they are taken into consideration. But gender as a criteria has not been institutionalized as a factor, so that gender is not considered as a factor in the appointment of judges. Again, disregard for seniority. We have seen the recent judgment in the collegium given by the Justice Nagaratna. senior women judges were overlooked despite stronger claims. So there were other judges of the high courts who were having the better claims in terms of seniority, but they were overlooked, and Justice Pancholi and Justice Alok were appointed. So these are the various issues. Why there should be more representation of women in judiciary? What purpose it will serve? First of all, women will carry their unique perspective definitely, which is shaped by the personal and professional experience. Because the personal experience of women is always very different from the experience of a man. Because women have more exposure to the family life as well as the professional life if they are serving some profession. So they will having some unique perspective that will bring their perspective to the judiciary. It will also increase judiciary credibility among the public. If, for example, if the Supreme Court passing a judgment on women rights, women empowerment, but at the same time, in the entire period since 1950, only 11 judges have been appointed as women at the Supreme Court. So basically, it reduces the public trust and the credibility. So it will help in increasing the public trust if the women representation is increased. Okay. Again, equality in practice. Practice what you preach. Supreme Court, from the various judgments, we observe that favors the women empowerment and equality. But if you are not practicing it, it will lower your credibility. So this gender equality will appear hollow. Role model effect, definitely. Presence of women judges will encourage more women in the legal profession. Therefore, it will enhance the diversity in thought. There are global examples also. In Canada and UK, more than 30% judges are women. In India, in Supreme Court, the ratio is 3.8%. Here it is 30%. In US Supreme Court, 4 out of 9 judges are women. Almost 45% judges are women. So what should be done? All those issues should be addressed. How? First of all, the diversity criteria, where the gender is not being taken into consideration by the collegium. Caste and regional representation is being taken. So gender should also be made a mandatory factor in the appointment. Collegium process should be transparent. Public should know how the judges are appointed and elevated to the High Court and the Supreme Court. Also, encourage women from the bar. Only 1 woman has been appointed from the bar, while in case of male, the number is 9. So, women from the bar should also be encouraged. Senior women advocates should be promoted to the higher judiciary. Also, the elevation, the promotion to the High Court or the Supreme Court should be done at an earlier stage, so that women can get a chance to become senior judge or a chief justice of a particular High Court or the Supreme Court. Also, there is an option of mandating it through policy, like fixing 30% for the judges in constitutional courts like High Court and Supreme Court. Parliament can do this. That is fixing 30% criteria. If this criteria can be for the local bodies, it is already there. And now from 2027, the next census, it will be for the women in parliament also. So it can be done for the judiciary also. So this is entire issue about the appointment of more judges in the Supreme Court. Next article, India-US relationships. Okay. So major thing which the India-US relationship is being anchored upon today by the 50% tariff. Everybody talks about 50% tariff, 50% tariff लग गया मतलब India-US relationship खत्म. अब कुछ नहीं रहा India-US relationship में. जो SCO summit भी हुआ था वहाँ पर Russia, India, China axis is clearly visible. So there can be a shift in the foreign policy of India from US to the Russia, China or other countries. But the tariff does not define India-US relationships. That is not the only factor. So let us see what are the other factors also. 50% tariff, we all know. After decades of building a mature, multifaceted relationship, basically the relationship has taken a setback. India's total export to US in 2024 was $87 billion. Out of this $87 billion, entire export is not at risk of 50% tariff, but 40 to 50 billion worth of export is at risk. The sectors which are at risk is gems and jewelry, 10 billion, textile and apparels, almost 8 billion, agriculture, leather and footwear. Basically, these are the sectors which are labor intensive. So it will impact the job creation in India. Definitely, there is going to be the impact. But there are certain sectors which are not going to be impacted by the tariffs, like pharmaceutical, services and IT, clean energy, aviation, defense, space and innovation. These sectors are not going to get affected. Now let us look at the other areas of cooperation between India and US. Real strength of ties. If trade and diplomacy are the hardware, people are the software. Use this line as it is in your main answers. First one is diaspora. 4.8 million strong Indian diaspora in the US. In US, 4.8 million Indians are there. And 150 Indian origin CEOs which are leading the global big companies. So in terms of diaspora, India has huge stake in US. Also, US also has huge stake. Okay. Second, students, more than 2 lakh students are enrolled in the US universities. Therefore, they are attracting the talent as well as the revenue on both the front. We can't say that, okay, India is benefiting, its students are going to the US. US is also benefiting. It is getting the revenue, the universities are getting the revenue, and also they are getting the talent. Okay. Indian IT engineers, basically they are driving the Silicon Valley. We all are aware of. Cultural exchange, like various programs, Indian representation. There are various Indians in the local legislature, in the parliament of the United States. Then strategic collaboration. Other sectors, the partnership is extending not only to the trade or the diaspora, but to other strategic sectors also. Strategic sectors as in defense and security. We have various agreements like Lemova. Okay, basically to share the logistics and intelligence sharing. Joint exercises are there. Intelligence sharing is there. Technology transfers are there. Imports of defense goods from the US is also there. Next is aviation. US is a key partner in India's aviation boom. एयर इंडिया का ऑर्डर है यूएस कंपनी के पास to import aircrafts. There is a cooperation in climate and clean energy also, in renewables, green hydrogen, in healthcare, in pharmaceutical. Okay, in space also. Recently, the NISAR satellite was launched. NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar. Okay, basically a imaging satellite. It is going to take the images from the space in very detailed manner. Okay, all these are the various sectors where the cooperation is there between India and US. What India should do now? Definitely the tariffs are going to impact India-US relationship. So what India should do is, it should keep its diplomatic channels open with the US, which it is keeping. Even the Commerce Minister one day back said the trade talks are still going on and we can expect a trade deal by October or November. Apart from this, India should diversify its markets. This is the first thing. In Africa, Latin America and Indo-Pacific, we should not be this much dependent on one country. Second, we have to strengthen the domestic resilience. Domestic demand has to be increased by innovating supply chains and moving up the value chain. This is the vocal for local. GST meet is also going to be there, GST Council meet, where the reduction in the GST rates of goods is expected to be reached upon. Also, persist in diplomacy, because this often makes the difference between setback and breakthrough. Diplomacy channels should be kept open. India-US relationship has, survived various events in history. It has survived the Cold War, the sanctions, the past trade disputes. So every time it has emerged stronger. So these are the various areas of cooperation between India and US. The rise and risk of health insurance. Basically, universal health coverage का concept होता है. Universal health coverage. What it says, very basic definition. Minimum definition. Minimum as in कि इतना तो होना ही चाहिए. According to the Bohr committee report, all members of the community, irrespective of their ability to pay, should be guaranteed the health care. That is the bare minimum definition. But what has happened is, in pursuit to provide the universal health coverage, the definition has changed to insurance. Agar insurance has been provided, basically meaning we have provided the universal health coverage. But that is not the truth. Insurance alone is not the component of universal health care. It can be one of the components, but it cannot be the only component. So we are going to have a look at the India's insurance model and what are the various issues, and then what more needs to be done. Health insurance in India, basically one scheme, आयुष्मान भारत के अंदर प्रधानमंत्री जन आरोग्य योजना, launched in 2018. It covers 58 crore people and the budget is 12,000 crore. ये सेंटर एक्सपेंडिचर हो गया. Then again there are state की health insurance programs which does an expenditure of 16,000 crore. So the cumulative becomes 28,000 crore. Itna expenditure central and state governments are doing on the insurance. It looks big. No, it's not big. It's very small. The number is not enough. It is a relatively small portion of public expenditure on health. What are the issues in insurance-based approach? Insurance-based approach, as we discussed, cannot be the only way. But in insurance-based approach also, there are issues. First one, profit-driven bias. क्या कहता है ये? देखो, अब प्रधानमंत्री जन आरोग्य योजना के अंदर इंश्योरेंस कवरेज है, but the 2/3 of this spending has gone to the private hospitals. Basically, private hospitals who are driven by profit motive. Okay, they are appropriating the large share of the scheme's allocation. Okay. So instead of going for the universal public health care, it is strengthening the for-profit providers. That is the health providers who are doing it for profit. Even if it is being done, like in West also it is being done, but it may not be bad if it is properly regulated. If it is regulated, it is not bad. But India, the regulation is very poor. You never know how the bills are being made. Okay, so they are not regulated properly and they are driving a major part of the scheme. Again, the insurance model in India focuses on hospitalization. If you are in hospital, that is inpatient care, it is being covered by insurance. But the outpatient care, hospital से जाने के बाद जो expenditure होता है care के ऊपर, दवाइयों के ऊपर, take care में, also the primary health care, these are being ignored by the health insurance in India. So they are basically skewing the expenditure towards tertiary care and leaving the preventive and basic services out of the reach of insurance, therefore making them weak. So primary services, basic health services are not being focused much upon. Again, 80% coverage is being done by the scheme. But the people who are the beneficiaries of this, they are not even aware. 35% of the insured patient have used their insurance. Rest other, they lack awareness, procedural hurdles, and hospitals discouraging insurance. So leading to the low coverage of the scheme. Then again, discrimination. Private hospitals, they prefer patients who are not insured, therefore leading to inequalities in treatment. Fifth, delayed reimbursement on the part of the state. The reimbursement have been delayed. Okay, अभी if you see, the budget was 12,000 crore. अभी जो पेंडिंग पड़ा है जो हॉस्पिटल्स को देना है गवर्नमेंट ने, वो 12,161 करोड़ है, more than the budget allocation. So because of this, many hospitals are opting out of the scheme. 609 hospitals have done it so far. They are opting out of the scheme because they are not getting their reimbursements in time. Then again, fraud and corruption. This is the extension of this point. Poorly regulated system. 3,200 hospitals have been flagged for fraud, fake procedures, denial of services, overcharging insured patient. उनको पता इंश्योरेंस है तो पैसा सरकार से आएगा, तो उनको ओवरचार्ज करते हैं, रूम का, दवाइयों का, इंजेक्शंस का, सबका. There are very weak audits and there is no transparency in this. Okay, so these are the various issues in insurance-based approach. This awareness, according to the household consumption expenditure survey, only 35% have taken the insurance. They've been able to use. So what should be done? Globally, for example, in cases like Canada and Thailand, insurance model is being adopted, right? But insurance model is part of UHC framework, but it is regulated in a well-mannered. Okay, so because of that, the coverage is more. So along with that, what should be the focus? Expenditure, the entire expenditure on health. On health insurance, it is 12,000 crore. The target of India is 2.5% as per national health policy, but the current expenditure is only 1.3%. So it should be increased. The global average is 6.1%. So we are way behind the expenditure on health. Okay. If a question comes on health insurance, we can conclude with this. Health insurance is little more than a painkiller. Painkiller से better है for a system that needs proper healing. Proper healing की requirement है, but ये only temporary painkiller की तरह काम करता है. So this is the health insurance. Fourth, governors can't sit over bills endlessly. What happens? We all are aware of the case, but still briefly, we will have a look at what is the case is all about. तमिलनाडु गवर्नमेंट ने 10 बिल्स पास किए, फिर रीपास किए एंड पास ऑन टू द गवर्नर अंडर आर्टिकल 200. गवर्नर ने एसेंट नहीं दिया, उनको रख लिया फॉर प्रेसिडेंट अंडर आर्टिकल 201. तमिलनाडु गवर्नमेंट वेंट टू सुप्रीम कोर्ट, 2 judges bench said under article 142 to do the complete justice, all bills are passed. Bill pass hai, even if the governor and president has not given the assent. So what the president did? President also went to the Supreme Court under article 143 for presidential reference, and it asked various questions like, can the judiciary impose self-made timeline on the governor and the president? The constitutional offices, they are not some temporary or statutory offices, they are constitutional offices. Can Supreme Court do it? Also, can the 2-judge bench has the power to interpret the constitution and rewrite the constitution? So there are various, almost 14 questions have been asked in the presidential reference. So on those 14 references, the case is going on in the Supreme Court, whether the governors or the president, there should be a timeline in which they should give their assent to the bill. The bill which is coming from the legislature is now with the governor or say president. So there should be a timeline in which they should give the assent. Justice Vikram Nath said, observed yesterday only, governors cannot sit over the wisdom of the legislature indefinitely. Basically, if the legislature has passed the bill, that bill reflects the wisdom of the house. So governor cannot sit over it indefinitely. No organ of the state can impair the functioning of the constitution. Okay. So these are the observations which have been made and the case we discussed. So what are the issues? First of all, article 200, where the governor has these options when a state bill is presented. Assent दे दो बिल को, पास, withhold कर लो, नहीं दे रहा, मना कर दिया, bill fail. Reserve the bill for president's consideration. President की consideration के लिए bill रख सकता है. There are certain cases in which it is mandatory for the governor to keep the bill reserved for the president. But other bills also the governor can reserve. Fourth, return the bill to state legislature for reconsideration. But if the bill has been repassed, the governor has to give the assent. इस केस में ये हुआ, हाउस ने रीपास कर दिया, बट उस केस में गवर्नर ने क्या किया? प्रेसिडेंट के पास कर दिया, फॉरवर्डेड टू प्रेसिडेंट. अब जब प्रेसिडेंट के पास बिल आ गया, प्रेसिडेंट के पास भी ऑप्शन है, एसेंट दे दिया, विदहोल्ड कर ले. इन सब में इशू कहाँ आता है कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के अकॉर्डिंग कोई टाइमलाइन नहीं है. तो इवन फॉर इंडेफिनेट पीरियड इन द पास्ट फॉर 10, 15, 20 years the bill have been pending with the president. Okay, so this is the major issue, specified time limit for the governors. So fundamental questions which come, the Supreme Court is also asked, apart from these observations, can the Supreme Court remain powerless while the governors indefinitely sit on bills? Solicitor General argued in the court that courts have no power. They are overreaching their powers, which has been given as per the Constitution, to set a timeline for the president or the governor. They do not have the right. The court said, can they remain powerless if governor do not pass a bill? Okay. If governors and presidents are not giving assent to the bill, does this not make elected legislature defunct and weaken the democracy? Again, it goes again the separation of power. The president under Article 143, separation of power, that is passing laws is prerogative of the legislature, and governor or the president are the integral part of the legislature. Governor is the integral part of the legislature, so his assent is part of the legislature approval. You cannot override it. You cannot set a timeline on this. If judiciary is doing this, judiciary is doing the judicial overreach. Necessary intervention is okay under Article 142. Okay, you need to make then full justice, secure justice for all, but you cannot overreach your judicial authority. Also, constitutional interpretation. How can you interpret the constitution like 2 judges bench? In constitution also it should be done by 5 judge bench, the constitutional bench. Constitutional interpretation karo, but do not rewrite it. If no timeline has been given in the constitution, there must be some rationale behind this, which the constitution, which must have been debated during the constitutional debates. Constituent Assembly की debates में इसको debate किया होगा. So you need not rewrite the constitution. So these are the various issues. We will see when the judgment will come. Any checks or any changes are being made to this provisions. Last article for today, Supreme Court order on regulatory assets. What is regulatory assets? We will see, but first of all we will see the Supreme Court order. Supreme Court ने बोला है कि अपने जो existing regulatory asset है उसको 4 साल में clear करो. क्या है regulatory asset? ACS और ARR का difference. Let us see. देखो, the cost which the DISCOMs are incurring, cost जो कंपनी को पड़ रही है, that is the average cost of supply. कितना expenses मेरा आ रहा है per unit delivery में. Second is annual revenue requirement. मेरा revenue कितना आ रहा है? Revenue from the consumer जो मैं per unit tariff impose कर रखा है. उनके बीच का difference. अब cost मान लो 100 आ गई, revenue मेरे पास 95 ही आया, तो कितना आ गया? 5 मेरा डेफिसिट आ गया. 5 मेरा कितना हो गया? लॉस है ये. अब दिस इज द रेगुलेटरी एसेट. इस 5 को अब देखते हैं कि कैसे बनता है, क्या होता है. ओके, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला ये जो रेगुलेटरी एसेट है, मतलब बेसिकली घाटा है जो कंपनी का, उसको 4 साल में क्लियर करो. ऑल्सो रेगुलेटरी एसेट 3% से ज्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए. साथ में गवर्नमेंट्स को बोला है कि एक रोड मैप तैयार करो रिकवरी और कंडक्टिंग intensive audits of the DISCOMs. Okay. What are regulatory assets? Cost minus revenue. If ACS is greater than ARR, DISCOM effectively makes a loss. अब क्या करते हैं कि मान लो फॉर एग्जाम्पल कोस्ट है 7.2, revenue has 7 per unit, difference is 0.2, and I'm serving, say for example, 10 billion units of electricity. So my loss would be 2000 crore. Now, obviously, if I'm running a DISCOM, I can't be in loss. So to take this loss, what I do is I increase the tariff from 7.2 to from 7 to I can increase to 8, 9. But what happens is it will burden the consumers with immediate tariff. So SCRC, that the State Electricity Regulatory Commissions, what they do is DISCOM को अलाउ कर देते हैं कि रेगुलेटरी जो तुम्हारा गैप है, रेगुलेटरी एसेट है, ये लॉस इसको तुम कैरी फॉरवर्ड कर लो. मान लो 2000 करोड़ का लॉस है, सो रिकवर दिस लॉस फ्रॉम द कंज्यूमर ओवर ए पीरियड ऑफ 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. धीरे धीरे एक साथ अपना टैरिफ मत बढ़ाओ. ठीक है, दिस इज द थिंग. एग्जाम्पल लेते हैं एक छोटा सा इसका. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल लेट्स सी द इम्पैक्ट ऑन कंज्यूमर. मान लो ये जो रेगुलेटरी एसेट बन गया, अब इसका क्या इम्पैक्ट होता है कंज्यूमर के ऊपर और डिस्कॉम के ऊपर. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल टेम्परेरी शॉर्ट टर्म में क्या रहता है, टैरिफ स्टेबल रहता है क्योंकि इंक्रीज नहीं किया डिस्कॉम ने, बट दे विल लीड टू स्टीपर हाइक रेट्स इन द फ्यूचर बिकॉज सम डे इट हैज टू बी रिकवर्ड. सो व्हेन इट विल बी रिकवर्ड द टैरिफ रेट्स विल बी इंक्रीज्ड, सो इट विल बी स्टीप. For example, Delhi का case लो. If you see Delhi, all the DISCOMs need to recover 16,000 crore rupees annually. If they start recovering this now, the per unit cost will increase by 5.5 rupees, which is huge, which is going to almost double the electricity bill of the houses and will create an uproar. So you cannot recover it in one go. So it will be called as regulatory asset and recover it in phases. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला इसको 4 साल में अब रिकवर करो. ओके. अगेन कंज्यूमर को क्या नुकसान दे रहा? टू बेसिकली द लॉसेस टू द कंज्यूमर. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, जो कॉस्ट कैरी फॉरवर्ड हो रही है वो तो तुमको पे करनी है इन फ्यूचर बाय द हायर टैरिफ्स, बट ऑल्सो इट इज कैरिंग अ कॉस्ट. द इंटरेस्ट कॉस्ट ऑफ दिस विल हेल्प also have to be paid by the consumer only. The 16,000 crore rupees this year's loss next year will become 18,000 crore because the interest will be added. Discoms have to borrow money from the market and they have to pay interest also. So it will lead to double burden on the consumer. Discoms के ऊपर क्या impact है? First, cash flow stress हो जाता है definitely. Why? Because revenue is less than the cost. So payment delays are there, leading to debt burden because they have to borrow the money to bridge the gap. Also, if I'm already running in loss, then definitely I will not have much money to invest in grid modernization, renewables, consumer services, therefore limiting the investment in modernization of these services. So it leads to a vicious cycle of financial distress and inefficiency of the discoms. So what should be done? Obviously correct them. First of all, cost reflective tariff should be there, not just as a populist measure, but the tariff should be reflecting the cost. जो cost आप incur कर रहे हो, that should be reflected in your tariffs. Okay, but at the same time they should be targeted subsidy for the vulnerable groups. Timely release of subsidy by the state government should be there. And second, tariffs should adjust with the input cost. For example, if the fuel cost is increasing, then the tariff should increase as per the fuel cost which has been increased. Okay. Then next, regulatory discipline. Obviously, how the timelines and transparency and enforcement of the capital expenditure should be there. How much your expenditure is being made, how much is the what should be the timeline. All this should be transparent in case of the discoms. Also, the regulatory asset जो हम carry forward कर लेते हैं, it should be used as an exception only. It should not be the norm. Okay, so these are the various things which should be done to correct this issue. Discoms issue is very important for exam. What is the issue? This is the impact. What should be done is there. So this can directly come in mains. So all today's topics are important from the mains point of view. If you have any doubt, any query, you can ask in the comment box. I'm attaching the PDF in the comment box as well as the description box. Now we'll see you tomorrow. Till then, good luck, goodbye. Thank you.